need 2 young volunteers, though. We got 2 young volunteers who'll come forward. One. Brother, one, come on.
Get over here.
Oh, there's one over there. Oh, there we go. Need 2 young volunteers. Okay. I will get back to you in just a minute. I want you to know this. I want you to know this. Wait here. I'll get back to you. Okay? Jesus is in the Galilee. Galilee was the breadbasket of Palestine. It was north of Jerusalem, and I learned something in my doctorate ministry classes this week that I did not know. Yeah. One of the things you can get your money's worth there. I learned that there were no Roman troops in the Galilee. Not one. That may come as a surprise to you. They were all in Jerusalem, because Jerusalem was the city and its surrounding area controlled by the Romans. The Galilee was controlled by the son of Herod the Great, Herod Antipas. And Rome let him rule the Galilee as long as there was no trouble. Keep the populace under control, and no one will get hurt. Now, there were Romans there. There were Romans who were retired legionnaires. And they lived in a Roman city called Tiberias that was built on the Sea of Galilee. It was the Miami Beach of the first century. And that's where you went to retire. Beach there, and water was cool. And a few hundred years earlier, the Greeks had built a city up in the hills of Galilee, not far from Nazareth, where Jesus grew up, a city called Cyprus. This was a nice place. There was plenty of food. The lake was nearby, you know. So these huge towns of Cyprus and Tiberias had become very wealthy. These retired Roman officials and legionnaires came with lots of money, which they gave to the locals who raised the food and fished in the Sea of Galilee. And so Galilee was quite prosperous. And so Jesus comes into the Galilee and starts talking about the kingdom of God. The government of God. I use that phrase deliberately because we don't have kingdoms anymore. He's talking about who's in charge. And in our day and age, who's in charge of the government. So the kingdom of God, the government of God is at hand. And all these Galileans who are fishing the sea and who are growing the crops are probably thinking, wait a minute, we've never had it so good. Are you telling us that things are going to change? So this may come as a surprise to you. But maybe not everybody in the Galilee was thrilled that Jesus was talking about the coming kingdom of God, the coming government of God. Because what if we're not going to be as well off as we are now? What's that? And so, they must have wondered. They must have wondered. But the point that Jesus was making was that the kingdom of God, the government of God, never makes peace with oppression, no matter where it is. And so he proclaimed that even in the Galilee, that was benefiting greatly from the Roman occupation, even here, eventually God was going to bring God's reign, God's government, and not Rome's. Now we know that government of God did not arrive in Jesus' day. We know that kingdom of God has not arrived yet. And we have come to realize that perhaps the fullness of the kingdom of God only lies in the next life. But we have learned from history that it does break through. It does break through from time to time. And in today's lesson, Jesus is telling us that the breaking through of the kingdom of God is inevitable. Inevitable. It will always happen over and over again, no matter what. It is as inevitable as taking a seed and planting it in the ground and having it turn into fruit. So tell me, what do you have? You have a seed. How big is it? It's really tiny, isn't it? Do you know what kind of seed that is? I'll give you a hint. It's a tomato seed. You know, you plant this one little seed in the ground. One tiny little seed. I can barely see it with my binoculars. Let's see. How small it is. That's tiny. And in a short period of time, just a couple of months, it will produce dozens of these. And inside each of these are dozens of seeds. And more. I mean, if we're not amazed by the miracle of life, we should be, even for something as simple as a tomato. And I think this one was strip mined in California, so. But it's amazing that this happens. So thank you very much for being my helper, as I told you to wait for a little while. Thank you very much. Thank you. You guys can go back to your seats. And it's not over yet. So anyway, there we go. The seed and the tomato. It's inevitable, Jesus says. It's as inevitable as the mustard seed going all over the place. And so that it creates this gigantic shrub. Jesus is using hyperbole here. No birds made the nest in mustard seeds. But the point is that mustard seed goes everywhere. It's kind of like thistles. It just goes everywhere. You can put as much of that stuff on your lawn as you want. You will still get them. They just go everywhere. It is inevitable that the kingdom of God will break through. The government of God will come about in small ways well before the end of time. It will happen, Jesus is saying. It's as inevitable as the grass growing through cement. Yeah. Pete Seeger has a song about that. God bless the grass that grows through cement. My gosh, he must have blessed my driveway and my sidewalk, because the grass just keeps coming up. And you know, things left to themselves, the grass will always win. Always. It's inevitable. And maybe Rome did not fall in Jesus' lifetime, but it did fall. It did fall. Because the kingdom of God, the government of God, makes no peace with oppression. And years later, when Martin Luther realized that the Pope was not only manipulating and controlling people's lives in this life, but said that he had the power to control people's lives in the next. And Martin Luther stood up and said, this doesn't even make sense. How can this be about the kingdom of God and the government of God? And so God's kingdom broke through. And when our founding fathers in this country were planning a new nation on this continent, they looked around at this business of the divine right of kings, the supposed divine right of kings, and Jefferson and Adams and these others had read about all kinds of other religions, and they didn't see anything in these other religions about the divine right of kings, and so they started to say, this doesn't make any sense. And so they said, well, it seems self-evident. Self-evident. It only makes sense that all people are created equal, and that the government serves at the behest of the government. That makes sense. And Aung San Suu Kyi dares to stand up to oppression in Burma and says, this doesn't make sense. That a government abuse and control its people in this way. And so she's put under house arrest for 20 years, but still wins the Nobel Peace Prize. But God's government, God's kingdom breaks through. And this week she finally got to go to Norway and give that speech to accept the Nobel Peace Prize. We come to our senses from time to time. We do, no matter how messed up we human beings are. The government of God, the kingdom of God breaks through. But I'm not sure if we're breaking through lately. We're about to enter another election cycle, and we all know what's going to happen. In this day and age, when we're calling for massive cuts in government spending, which I think probably most of them are pretty good, not all, some of them are pretty good. We're also getting ready for the candidates for our highest office to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And we all know what they're going to do with it. They're going to create television ads that talk about why their opponent is so messed up. It's all going to be about the attack. And for what? to convince the 3 to 5% of the population that hasn't made up its mind yet who the bad guy is so they can vote for the good guy. And they're not going to talk about issues. And then whatever party gets in power, the lobbyists will spend hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, and will write legislation for our legislators so that they don't have to. And the legislators can be beholden to them because they know they need their money to get re-elected. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And so maybe it's time for us as the church to ask, how does the kingdom of God and the government of God break through that morass? How does the kingdom of God and the government of God break through that mess? Well, I'll tell you how. It has to do with all of us. I'm going to give you 2 jobs this week. 2. 1, call the person you're going to vote for president. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm saying call the one that you're choosing and say stop the attack ads. Don't do it. Talk about the issues. Enough of us call. Maybe it'll change. And secondly, the problem with a lot of these attack ads is they're so polarizing us as a people that we don't talk to each other. So the second thing you can do is find somebody who's going to vote for a candidate you're not voting for and talk to them like a real human being and listen to them and what they have to say. We might learn something. We might learn something. And in learning something, maybe the government of God, the kingdom of God will show its light in a way that we don't expect. Jesus tells us it's inevitable. It's as inevitable as that tomato plant growing up and giving lots of tomatoes with lots of seeds. It's as inevitable as the mustard seed going through the winds and planting itself everywhere, or the thistles for that matter. It's as inevitable as the grass growing through cement. In the grand scheme of things, vote for the grass.